Good day, I am back in the kitchen. As many of you may know, we have a Facebook group called Planet Vegetaria, which is for vegetarians and vegans and those who aren't vegetarian or vegan who might want to have a dabble with vegetarianism or try more vegetarian recipes. We have had a huge success with bread on the Facebook group, which is great. And one of the questions that does come up every now and again is whether we have a recipe for a no-knead bread. Now, we do have soda bread recipes, and we do have the soda rolls, which are cooked on the hob, but we actually don't have a yeasted no-knead bread recipe. So Michelle Marchesani did actually post one for us a couple of weeks ago on Planet Vegetaria. And the reason that we're looking for a no-knead bread is there are a number of people on the group who don't have mixers or have a lack of dexterity in their fingers or strength to actually do physical kneading. So I'm trying out this recipe. I'm going to grab it now so that I actually get the correct name and don't say the wrong person. But it is called, it's from alexandracooks.com, and it's My Mother's Peasant Bread. And basically it's a bread which you mix. It's supposed to be quite wet, quite a wet dough. It's a dough that you mix, let rise, knock back, let rise again. But all you're doing is effectively mixing the ingredients together rather than mixing them thoroughly and then kneading in the machine or kneading by hand. So there are two rises in this. One is the traditional rise in a bowl, and the other is another traditional rise in a pan. But this time the pan is actually a Pyrex glass loaf tin. So a Pyrex loaf glass. What is it? Pyrex loaf tin, but made of glass. That's what I mean. So I'm going to show you the ingredients, and then we're going to basically just put all of this together. It does seem quite simple. I don't know. I suppose I'm such a traditionalist when it comes to bread, with not even using instant yeast. I mean, if you want to use instant yeast, you can use instant yeast for this as well. But I use active yeast, and active yeast needs to be activated in water. And I suppose I like the whole tradition and process of bread making. But having shortcuts is absolutely great. So let me go over here and show you what we're going to be doing. In this bowl, we have 512 grams of bread flour. There's some butter here, which we're going to be using to grease this Pyrex bread loaf tin. What is it? Anyway, it's Pyrex. I don't know why it won't work, or supposedly won't work, in a traditional bread tin, but we might give it another go in a traditional bread tin another day. I'm using active yeast. If you want to use instant dried yeast, you can, which would just be one step less than this. Then we're going to be using 3 cups of water, 1 cup of boiling water, and 2 cups of cold water. And what's going to happen for me, because I'm using active yeast, is the 1 cup of boiling water, 2 cups of cold water will go into here. One other ingredient that we are going to be using is sugar. Now, we don't normally use sugar, but the recipe does call for sugar. We would normally use honey, but I'm going to use sugar just to try and keep as close to the recipe as we can. The recipe also calls for 2 teaspoons of salt. Now, please feel free to put that into yours. We don't use salt in any of our breads that we make at home, unless we're making a focaccia. But if you want to put the salt in, please do. But that's the only difference between the recipe that I've stated, Alexandra cooks, and what we're doing today. So the first thing is 1 cup of boiling water into here. I'm going to take this away and put 2 cups of cold water into here. There we are. So that's effectively giving us about half a litre. Then we're adding 2 teaspoons of sugar into here. Just about 2 teaspoons. Stirring that through. And now I'm going to add 2 teaspoons of yeast. I'm saying that's 1, 2. If you were using instant yeast, you could add your instant yeast to this flour and add your water directly into here to start. But what's going to happen now is we're going to leave this to froth up. I'm going to move that away, put that there. So you can see here that the yeast has been activated. It's going to give that a really good stir. Right, so just pop that there, bring the flour back. As I say, if you wanted to put salt in, now's the time to put the salt in. We're adding the liquid in. This is supposed to be quite a wet dough, so it's mostly more of a batter. Okay, that's all worked in. That was all of what, 30 seconds, something like that. Let's just scrape the sides down. Again, make sure you've got clean hands whenever you're cooking. Get all that off there. And now we're covering it with a tea towel. And we're going to leave this now until it's doubled in size. It is quite warm in our kitchen. If your kitchen was cooler, then do leave it in as warm a place as possible. We'll be back maybe in about an hour, see what's happened. So this has now been rising for an hour. Let's have a look what's under here. Oh, wow. Actually, I think that was just touching the top there. I mean, it is a wet dough and there's quite a lot of yeast in there. So I think that's expected. What it does say now is use a tablespoon of butter to grease this, which seems to me a huge amount of butter, but as we're doing it as near to the recipe as we can, I'm going with the tablespoon of butter. I'd like to try this with oil rather than butter. Sure, you could use coconut oil as well if you wanted. Right, just wash my hands. It does say that this next bit is messy. It says use forks, the teens of a fork, to scrape it away and knock it back. Which obviously, oh, I see what it means. It means like that, right? I don't know if you can see on the outside. Obviously, when I do that, when I do that, it is actually scraping it away from the bowl. I'm going to do that all the way around. And then you tip this into there. I'm sort of on the wrong side. I have to do that. And still got a bit in here. Gosh, it is sticky, isn't it? Right. It says to let that rise for 20 to 30 minutes and stick the oven on at 220 degrees centigrade. This has been rising for 14 minutes. It said to rise for 20 to 30 minutes, but I'm going to put it in the oven now because it's already overlapping the rim up here. You can just about see that. So our oven is heated up to temperature and I'm going to bung this in. Well, I'm not going to bung it, I'm going to place it carefully in the oven. As you can see, it's got quite a wobble on it. The bread has now been cooking for 15 minutes at 220 centigrade fan, and then a further 17 minutes at 190 centigrade fan. I'm going to take it out of the oven now and put it on this blue silicone pad we have here. Oh, wow. Oh, it's certainly risen a little bit more. As you can see, it was at the top level when we put it in the oven. Let's see if I can turn it out. Oh yeah, easily. Pop that over there. Well, first impressions are great. Second impressions for me, could be a little bit heavy. Yeah, do I put it? Well, I think it's cooked. It's not quite as hollow on the bottom as I'd expect. But look, we're going to leave it like that and let it cool down, and we're going to see what it's like. Because we have followed the recipe, apart from not putting salt in, we followed the recipe and the process pretty rigidly. So we'll see what it's like when it's cooled down. This is the final bread after it's been cut open. You can see, if I come around this side, there's relatively good rise here, though there's some compaction of the dough here at the bottom where really it need a little more time to rise. It's still quite dense. I did actually cook it for another 10 minutes in the oven outside of the loaf tin, which I think was good. The recipe does say you could cook 1.5 litre loaf or 2 1 litre loaves. And I think what I'd do next time is I would use 2 1 litre tins and see what happens. It's soft. You can see it's soft. It's still quite moist, but it's not wet, and it's perfectly edible. The crust is it does have a chew to it, which actually is quite nice. It made great toast. I'm just going to have to go a bit into the light, and then I'm going to cut a slice. So you can see it is a soft bread. There's not a great deal of texture in there, firmness in there, because it hasn't had any kneading, so the gluten hasn't significantly developed, but clearly there's been a rise, and it's a decent loaf of bread. Next time I think I would put some salt in it, because I think the kneading has not developed a great deal of flavour. But we don't really put salt in our bread anyway, as I said. But I think I would do next time here. We're going to have another go at doing this bread in a slightly different way. But this was following the recipe that was online, and it's worked. That is a loaf of bread. Okay, thanks for watching.